Fella, we'll just practice past paper questions. So ionic equations, we haven't done ionic equations yet. So, but the reaction is there. He's asking you to make copper chloride crystals. Okay. So this is as a equation wala partner. He's asked you for the equations. That's in total. That's 4 marks. So the first thing is कि how do you make copper chloride? मुझे बताओ कि copper is copper 2 chloride, copper plus 2. Cl is group 7, so -1, and it's going to be CuCl2. ठीक है? So it's going to be CuCl2. अब ये कि what is the acid that's going to be used? क्या acid?
Acid.
ठीक है, तो HCl होगा, and you've got 4 options. One is metal, the other one is metal oxide. You've got metal hydroxide, and then there's a fourth one which is metal carbonate. ठीक है, copper carbonate. ठीक है. In this case, he's asking you to make it from copper carbonate. ठीक है, he's already told us. So we're going to use copper carbonate. So we're going to use copper carbonate, and the other byproducts would be water and carbon dioxide. Okay, just to balance two HCls. So now, based on the solubility, you will decide what method. Essential practical details. Remember, carbonates are all insoluble except for group one. Okay, but the rest are all insoluble. So this is insoluble. This is a solid. The acid is obviously always soluble. Chlorides ka kya? Chlorides are all soluble except for silver and lead. So this is also soluble, okay, because all of them are soluble except for silver and lead. Baki, water is a liquid, carbon dioxide is a gas. Achha, so soluble salt being produced from an insoluble reactant. So कौन सा method है?
Excess method.
Excess method, okay. So this is excess method. So what you're going to ensure is that you're going to add excess of copper carbonate so that all the HCl gets converted into the salt, and then you're going to filter out this thing. अहमद, मैं ना ये सारी आज कोशिश करता हूँ सारी वो रिकॉर्डिंग्स वगैरह ना मैं सेंड करता हूँ. अच्छा, तो excess method is कि add excess copper carbonate to HCl, dilute HCl or dilute HCl aqueous, right? And excess में add करना. So keep adding. How do you know it's an excess? कि you will, there, once all the HCl is reacted, there's not going to be any carbon dioxide. Keep adding copper carbonate until it remains undissolved or you stop seeing carbon dioxide bubbles. So keep adding, उसको adding कर लेना
सर
until.
एक क्वेश्चन है, ये हम लोग सिलेबस का कब तक खत्म कर लेंगे सर?
बिहार से नवंबर तक तो कर लेंगे.
फिर पास पेपर प्रैक्टिस वगैरह, ये P6 में तो ये वो हेल्प चाहिए.
P6 हम बीच में स्टार्ट कर लेते हैं. अच्छा, P6 का इशू ये जो है ना, ये टॉपिक है इसमें P6 दिस इज P6. ये जो क्वेश्चन उसने पूछा ना, प्रैक्टिकल डिटेल्स, although this is a P4 question, but you get exactly the same question in P6. In that case, it's going to be a 6-mark question. उसका जो आखिरी क्वेश्चन नहीं आता. So in that case, he won't even give you the details कि how to make it. वो पूरा scratch है ना. The reason this question has fewer marks is क्योंकि he already told you some of the details. Yeah, what substance would you use, etc. Right? So P6, जहाँ पे भी practical details आ जाती हैं, that's P6. Electrolysis we'll do, that's going to come in P6 as well. Anything that involves practical details. Achha, keep adding copper carbonate until it remains undissolved. So that would mean all the HCl is gone and it has been converted into the salt. Or you can write that the bubbles of CO2 stop forming, right? Filter out the excess. Copper carbonate solid, you filter it out. और उससे क्या, preparation of crystal, I mean, you have to prepare crystals, right? So फिर last part is evaporate, heat and evaporate. the filtrate till saturation point. Cool gradually to plain crystals. Yeah, cool gradually and filter crystals. So dry का word नहीं use किया filter crystals. But we're gonna dry anyways. ठीक है, dry crystals in sunlight or between filter papers. ठीक है, so we're done. Oh, the answer fit हो जाता है. What I did was that the equation actually is part of this. ठीक है. अच्छा, we just ignore ionic equations. We haven't done those. अच्छा, next one is he's saying describe the, now it's a 4-mark question. Reason it's a 4-mark question compared to the previous one is that he didn't tell us the substances that we're going to use. He only told us that he wants to make zinc nitrate. I said zinc, I told you what is the charge of zinc, because you can't figure out the charge from the periodic table. Zinc is part of the transition metal group, but it doesn't have any of those properties. Uh, Zinc always has a charge of +2, remember that. So what is nitrate? It's NO3 minus 1, so it's going to be ZnNO3 twice. मुझे बताओगे, what is the acid that's going to be used? क्या acid होगा? Anyone? What is the acid that we need to use?
The nitric acid.
Nitric acid. And so you've got 4 options. You can use zinc oxide, zinc hydroxide, or zinc carbonate. So zinc oxide is already given. So you're going to use zinc oxide and oxide, so water would be produced. Acha, nitrates are all soluble. According to the solubility table, any nitrate, anything, charge चीजें soluble थी. 4 things, right? Group 1 were all soluble, NO3 minus 1, anything that has NO3 minus 1, that's soluble. NH4 plus 1 are all soluble, or acids are all soluble, okay? So these are all soluble. Nitric acid is all soluble. Oxides का क्या लिखा था in the solubility table? Oxides were that most of them are insoluble, except for group 1 and some in group 2, right? So most of them are insoluble. Zinc is not soluble. If it had been group 1, then it would have been soluble, or the bottom of group 2. अच्छा, फिर से excess method है, right? Insoluble. And this is soluble, right? So this is going to be excess method again, and we like them, but basically you have to write the whole thing again, which is you're going to add excess zinc oxide solid to nitric acid aqueous in a beaker like that. Or the next thing is the same, keep adding zinc oxide solid until it stops dissolving. That means the nitric acid has all gone and it has been converted into, so until it stops filter out zinc oxide, excess zinc oxide. Because it's a solid, you can filter it out. And then Baki, you can write this on your own. You can write filtrate and a description of crystallization. Detailed description of, ये detail में होनी चाहिए crystallization. I'm just skipping it right now because we just wrote it down. तो क्या होगा? Evaporate the solution till crystallization point or saturation point. Cool gradually, filter out the crystals formed and dry the crystals in sunlight. ठीक है? अच्छा, now this one, although this one is Ionic equation, I'm just going to ignore Ionic equation because we haven't done that. Balki, I'm going to ignore the whole question. Ionic equation पे ही है. So here's another 4-mark question. So remember this one, the same question would be for 6-mark in P6. Balki, we'll try and do one of those. So this one, aluminium sulfate. Aluminium is what? It's group 3, right? Sulfate is SO4 minus 2. So formula क्या होगा? It's going to be Al2 and SO4 thrice. अच्छा, tell me what acid would you use to make this salt? कौन सा acid होगा? Ahmed, Nabila, Shanze, what acid here? What acid would we use? ठीक है, Nabila, sulfuric acid, ठीक है. So you're going to use sulfuric acid H2SO4. And you've got four options, metal, metal oxide, metal hydroxide, or metal carbonate. He already told us it's the oxide, okay? It's aluminium. Oxide, aluminium is +3. Oxygen is -2, so it's going to be Al2O3. And oxide plus acid will produce salt plus water, okay? That's your reaction. Achha, so I don't think he's asking for the equation. He never, I mean, just to be on the safe side, you're going to write the equation and you can balance it. SO4 thrice, so you can have 3. Al is twice, that's already twice. 3 H's, 6 H's, so I'm going to 3. Now it's probably balanced. So this is, acids are all soluble. Sulfates का क्या था? All sulfates are soluble, except for 4,5 sulfates. So look at the solubility table, all sulfates were soluble except for कौन से थे? Lead, silver, barium,
Strontium.
strontium, ठीक है, and calcium partially. So all sulfates were soluble. So this is a soluble salt. And all oxides are insoluble, except for group 1 and some in group 2. So this is not group 1 or group 2, so this is insoluble. So again, this is excess method again. So I'm not going to write the description. I'm just going to just explain it. Okay. What is the description? Okay, you add excess aluminium oxide. Keep adding. You want to get rid of the acid so that all of it gets converted to the salt. So keep adding aluminum oxide to sulfuric acid until it's in excess. How do you know it's in excess? That it remains undissolved at the end. Filter it out. Okay, so the only thing now you have in the solution is the salt, and then you crystallize it. Okay. So ये excess हो गया. अब बार-बार यही आई जा रहा है excess. This is again excess method. Okay, we soluble salt, insoluble reactant. So describe how you would prepare. That's again excess method. Uh, hmm. Is the name or color of the precipitate? हाँ ठीक है. So what we can do this. We can try this one. बल्कि नहीं ये वाला नहीं पी करते. Colors of precipitate उस पे आ गया. So we'll skip that. अच्छा इसमें where's the salt preparation part in this one? That's part B, I guess. अच्छा we'll read the whole question. Fertilizers are soluble salts containing one or more of the essential elements required for plant growth. Ammonium chloride can be prepared by the reaction of aqueous ammonia with hydrochloric acid. You can remember aqueous ammonia, okay? Ammonia can be a gas. Ammonia is a gas. It's a very pungent smelling, sharp gas. But he's saying aqueous ammonia. That means it's dissolved in water. So, Sika, write an ionic equation for this reaction. Forget the ionic equation. We'll just write the equation. And state the suitable reagents and outline the experimental procedure. If you want to prepare a pure sample of the fertilizer, as a potassium chloride prepare karna hai. Okay, the whole procedure. So B is the part where you have to prepare the salt. So we're just doing B. We're ignoring the rest of the question. So what needs to be prepared? It's potassium chloride. Potassium is group 1, it's K+1. Chloride is Cl, which is group 7, that's -1. So we're preparing potassium chloride. Achha, how are you going to do that? He didn't tell us what the reagents are. Usse bas kya hai ki potassium chloride has to be prepared. So the acid will be HCl. And you've got four options. It's either going to be potassium metal, or potassium oxide, potassium hydroxide, or it's going to be potassium carbonate. Well, potassium metal can't be used because it's too reactive. Remember, only Mazit metals are going to be used. So we're just going to ignore that. Acha, potassium oxide or potassium hydroxide? I'm going to go with potassium hydroxide. So I'm ignoring potassium oxide because remember I told you that group 1 oxides, hydroxides were very soluble. Group 1 compounds are all very soluble. All of them are soluble. So the trouble with group 1 oxides is I also told you if you have a soluble oxide in water, it will turn into a hydroxide. So इससे ना oxide लिखने का there's no point in writing oxide because if you have an oxide which is soluble, it will dissolve in water, mix with water, and it will turn into a hydroxide. So I'm just going to go with a hydroxide. I could have gone with a carbonate as well. So क्या बनेगा? It's going to produce salt and water. Now the thing is, all of them are.
ऑक्साइड वाला पॉइंट क्या बोला आपने अभी?
वो मैंने कहा था कि सॉल्वेट टेबल नहीं था ऑक्साइड्स एंड हाइड्रोक्साइड्स, ठीक है? आई रोट
जी
दिस ओवर देयर ना कि उसका क्या था, दे ऑल इनसॉल्युबल, राइट?
जी
एक्सेप्ट क्या था कि द रूल वाज ग्रुप 1 वाज सॉल्युबल, NH4 plus 1 oxides hydroxides are soluble, and there was some in group 2 that was soluble, right?
जी सर.
और वो ग्रुप 2 में ना बॉटम वाले थे, the ones like barium hydroxide was soluble, bottom of group 2 was strontium hydroxide was soluble, and calcium hydroxide was partially soluble. अच्छा, ये मैंने वही रूल लिख दिया कि this is what the solvent table told us, right? But over there, I also told you that if you have an oxide that is soluble, right? This is a barium oxide, that is, उधर लिखा हुआ है, it is soluble. All are insoluble except for barium oxide or barium hydroxide. So the thing is, if you put it in a solution, though, it will mix with water and it will actually form barium hydroxide. ठीक है, so there's no point in writing an oxide if it's soluble. You clear it?
Yes.
If you have any group 1 oxide, for example, if it is soluble, then that means if you're adding it into a solution, so it will actually become dissolved and it will become a hydroxide. So you say there's no point in writing oxide if it's soluble. Okay? Clear? Achha, anyways, going back to the question. This one is titration. All of them are soluble. Group 1 compounds are all soluble, acids are all soluble. Group 1 compounds are all soluble, water is a liquid. अब मुझे बताओ, if all of them are soluble, what is the method of preparation that you're going to use? ये कितने marks में? 4.
Titration.
ठीक है, तो titration है. So you've got two reactants, you've got HCl, and you've got KOH. Titration is what? It's pick one reagent. I'm going to add one of them to the top, or HCl you can. It's a HCl you can add at the bottom, right? Okay, so this is, and you have to ensure if there are 5 HCl particles, you want to add exactly 5 particles of KOH from the top, right? So top say you're going to add, and the indicator will change color. So I'm going to start writing the description. The description was, we did this yesterday as well. You fill the burette with, I'm just going to cut this out. So the description was fill the burette with QH aqueous. Pipette 25 cm cube of HCl into conical flask. So then what? Add indicator, add suitable indicator. It's your choice. Let's say I told you there were 4 indicators, 3 indicators. I'm going to go with methyl orange. No need to write this in the answer because there's already too much stuff that's written. So even if you don't write it, you'll get marks for the other stuff that you're going to write. Okay? So add suitable indicator and अच्छा methyl orange होगा, so it's going to be red orange because it's an acid initially. Start titration, add KOH from the top dropwise. Dropwise and slowly. Stop titration when color changes. So as soon as the last particle of HCl reacts with the KOH, it's no longer going to be red-orange, it will turn to yellow. So in our case, the color change would be red-orange to red to yellow, kar dete hain. Or red-orange to yellow. So then you need to get rid of, now all the HCl has been converted to your salt and water, right? Because all the HCl is gone and your salt and water has been produced, and you're going to stop the titration. You're going to stop adding QAs from the top. So you have to remove the indicator, so add charcoal. The add charcoal remove indicator. And you need to form crystals now. So the whole crystallization part, heat evaporate solution till crystallization point. So cool gradually. And filter out crystals formed and dry them in sunlight. Okay, so the only issue is that in titration you just have to write. You just have to write a lot of stuff. Okay. ये clear है? This is titration. Is this clear?
जी सर.
So ये हो गया, ठीक है. बात तुम्हारा रिजल्ट सही है. हाँ ये करना था, ठीक है. We had to do this one, which is अच्छा, silver chloride is an insoluble salt. So outline the preparation of dry silver chloride starting as an insoluble salt. This was the third method of preparation. Silver is Ag. Or silver, there's an issue with silver as well, that you have to remember the charge of silver, which is always +1. Mostly it's +1. Chloride -1. This is insoluble. Okay, उसने खुद ही कह दी. He told us that it's an insoluble salt. So you don't even have to look at the solubility table. Solubility table में था कि all chlorides are soluble except for silver and lead. Now, this is not going to be excess method. This is not going to be titration. Whenever you have an insoluble salt, so जो method of preparation है, that's going to be ionic precipitation. ठीक है, that's the method of preparation that's going to happen. Or उसमें, what did I explain? I mean, this is the easiest one. Whenever you have an insoluble salt, you're going to think of two reagents. One should have Ag+1 and the other one should have Cl-1. Okay, so whenever there's an insoluble salt, think of two reagents. And when you think of those two reagents, they have to be soluble reagents. So iske saath na, there's got to be a negative ion, and this one should have Cl ions, there must be a positive ion. So think of a compound that is soluble, which has silver ions in it. So nitrates are all soluble. So we can go with the nitrate. Or वो Cl वाला, which Cl is soluble, you can think of Na+1. NaCl is soluble. So एक side says Cl ion, one side should have Cl ions, the other one should have Ag+1. According to Solvay table, all nitrates are soluble. According to Solvay table, all group 1 compounds are soluble. So these two are soluble. You could have thought of any reagent basically over here. It could have been HCl as well. It could have been potassium chloride. A lot of chlorides are soluble. Or nitrates, I think uh, silver compounds. Which silver compounds are soluble? Silver chloride is insoluble. Silver carbonate is also insoluble. Silver phosphate is also insoluble. Silver sulfate is also so I think there's only one option, which is nitrate. So what's going to happen is okay, when you mix these two compounds into a solution, because they are soluble, their ions will dissociate. So the ions will be floating around, and so all their ions will be floating around in water, and they will start combining randomly with each other. So if Ag and Cl they combine, so they'll form AgCl, which is insoluble. So they'll form a precipitate at the bottom that will settle at the bottom. And NaNO3, even if they combine, they will, because group 1 compounds are all soluble, so they will remain dissolved in water, right? They will not form a precipitate. So NaNO3 will remain part of the solution because they are highly soluble, but AgCl will come out of the solution and they'll form a precipitate. So description easy. I mean, I don't think they were asking for the equation, but the other description is easy that it's just a 3-line description. Mix silver nitrate, aqueous, and NaCl, aqueous. Filter out the precipitate that is formed. Okay, that's it. Filter out AgCl precipitate formed. Wash the precipitate with distilled water. Okay, you're going to wash it with distilled water, and the last thing is dry the AgCl precipitate in sunlight. Okay. So that's the third method of preparation, which is ionic precipitation. Clear? Shanze, the viewers are, is this clear? Yeah, is this clear? I see this is again potassium chloride, right? We just did that. How do you prepare crystals of potassium chloride? As a next, forget the moles part. So over here, he's saying you have to prepare potassium sulfate, which is again going to be potassium is group 1, right? So this is K2SO4. Group 1 compounds are all soluble, so it is a soluble salt, he told us. The acid that we are going to use, that's sulfuric acid, he told us. So you've got potassium, potassium oxide, potassium hydroxide, or potassium carbonate. So we're going to go with potassium hydroxide. And it is soluble. Group 1 compounds are all soluble, so water would be produced. So if all of them are soluble, this is going to be titration. So it's kind of the whole description of titration has to be given. I mean, you didn't have to write the equation because he wasn't asking for the equation. He was just asking for the method of preparation, which is that fill the burette with KOH, prepare 25 cm cube of sulfuric acid into a flask, add a few drops of indicator, start titration, add KOH drop by drop, and stop when the indicator changes color. Add charcoal to remove the indicator, and crystallization wala part. Heat, evaporate the solution till saturation point, and cool gradually, filter out the crystals formed, and once crystals are formed, you dry them in sunlight. अच्छा वो क्या कि अच्छा this one as well. He wants to prepare ammonium nitrate. Now remember, ammonium salts was your fifth reaction. The acid that's going to be used is going to be nitric acid, and you're going to mix ammonia with it. You get that was your ammonium salts. There was a fifth reaction, which is this one. And again, all of them are soluble. Ammonia is aqueous. Anything that has NH4 or NO3 is aqueous. It is soluble. उसे खुद ही कहा हुआ है, starting material is aqueous ammonia and dilute nitric acid. So you're not going to get marks for writing this equation because he already told you this. और उससे क्या है, I think he's just asking you to name the experimental technique. I mean, you have to read the question because he gave you very few lines. You just have to name the experimental technique, so that's going to be titration. So you don't have to write the whole description. Just name the experimental technique. Or एक वो crystallization वाला part. He's asking you to how is solid ammonium nitrate obtained from aqueous solution. So you have to describe how are you going to form the crystals. So you don't have to explain the whole process in this case. ठीक है? So this is also so I state the name for this type of reaction. Remember, it's an insoluble salt, calcium carbonate, being formed from insoluble salts are always made through ionic precipitation. Ionic PPT precipitation. 1 second. So they're always prepared through ionic precipitation. Each side where you need calcium ions coming from one side, carbonate ions coming from the other side. You need two reagents. He did most of our work for us, right? So calcium comes from one compound, carbonate comes
एक
from.
सवाल है, अभी आपने लास्ट क्या बोला, आयोनिक प्रेसिपिटेशन से कैसे सॉल्ट्स बनते हैं?
The insoluble salts, हमेशा, what was the method? It was always ionic precipitation, no?
सही.
वो तीन तरीके थे ना, soluble salts. If all of them are soluble, that's titration. Soluble salt, if the reactant is insoluble, that was excess method. And if the salt is insoluble, then it's ionic precipitation. Ionic precipitation was that you have a salt, you think of two reagents. One should have calcium ions, and the other one should have the other ion, which is the carbonate ion, so that the salt can be produced, right? But the two compounds, they must be soluble, right? So he took sodium carbonate, but it could be any carbonate that is soluble. And calcium, any calcium compound that is soluble, that would be sufficient. So let's suggest how the calcium carbonate is removed from the mixture. That's easy. You just filter it out. It's insoluble, right? So filter it out. Wash the precipitate or the residue with distilled water. And dry in sunlight. You're insoluble, you just filter it out. Okay, is this clear? You clear? Is this clear to everyone?
जी सर.
Achha, one thing you have to be careful about is that I mean, you have to learn how to write the exact answer. You can't always write stories about, I mean, you can't just start writing the whole story. Even if it's a method of preparation, you just answer the part that he's asking for. But for example, he's asking for name the type of reaction. That's it. He get no more stories. It's just called ionic precipitation, and that's it. Construct an ionic equation for the reaction between calcium. I mean, we didn't do ionic equations. We skipped that. only this part suggests how calcium carbonate is removed from the mixture. Your answer will be limited to just answering this part. You don't have to write the whole story. ठीक है? तो वो अक्सर मैं देखता हूँ कि people just love writing stories. You don't. I mean, you're gonna lose marks if you start doing that. So you have to be very, very specific with your answers. So, chale, sir, for each salt, suggest the name of the missing reagent and briefly describe how to obtain the solid product from the reaction mixture. As the first one, salt to be made, lithium chloride. Lithium is group 1, so that means soluble in the lithium chloride, right? The acid is HCl, so he already gave us. So you've got 4 options: lithium, lithium oxide, lithium hydroxide, lithium carbonate. So I'm going to go with lithium hydroxide because that will also be soluble. I can't use lithium metal because that will be too reactive. So reagent 2 will be lithium hydroxide. And I could obtain solid lithium chloride by, अब यहाँ पे मैं खुद confused है वो मांग क्या रहा है. The method would be titration. And solid lithium chloride, how do I obtain that? I will obtain that by, because it's soluble, the salt itself will be obtained via crystallization. ठीक है. अब यहाँ पे I'm not sure कि एक सेकंड इसका चेक कर रहा था मार्क्स की में. Does he mean कि how is the salt prepared? If all of them are soluble, it should be titration. But I think because it's a soluble salt, I think he's looking for how we can say how to obtain the solid product from the reaction mixture. So I think he's not asking for the method of preparation. He's asking कि भाई वो the mixture is this. So how do we hard क्यों बन गया? अच्छा. So how do we get this? I think that's crystallization. ठीक है. So is this clear? बाकी will continue next time then. ठीक है. Then okay everyone.
That
No, sir.
मैंने solution भी post किया हुआ है of the same worksheet. ठीक है. अल्लाह हाफिज.